Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're doing something a bit different. We're going to reframe the basic building blocks of life not just as microscopic biology, but as a suite of revolutionary technologies. We're going to look at the molecules that make up your cells and your food, but we're going to look at them through the eyes of an engineer.
So think about this for a second. What do a water filter, a COVID-19 vaccine, and a veggie burger actually have in common? It sounds like a joke setup, right? But the answer lies in how modern engineers are harnessing nature's ultimate toolkit to solve real-world problems. By understanding and manipulating the structures of biological molecules, we are unlocking completely new ways to manufacture materials, treat diseases, and literally feed the planet. To figure this out, we're going to break down 4 major biomolecules: carbohydrates, nucleic acids, proteins, and lipids.
First up, carbohydrates, and how we're using them for things like plastics and filters. Now, I know when we say carbs, you probably just think of the sugars that give you a quick burst of energy from a piece of fruit, but they go way beyond that. Look at how nature takes simple sugars like glucose or fructose and stacks them up to build these incredibly tough, complex structures like cellulose. When you chain them together like that, they're no longer just food, they become a literal structural marvel. I mean, cellulose makes up the rigid walls of plant cells, and engineers, well, they've definitely taken notice of that incredible physical property.
In fact, engineers are using that exact mechanical strength and natural porosity to build entirely biodegradable water filters. And the process is surprisingly straightforward. You just prep the cellulose, compact it into these highly porous layers, attach the filter medium, treat it, and assemble the housing. That natural porosity is perfect for trapping impurities efficiently. So what we get is a cost-effective, environmentally friendly alternative to those traditional synthetic polymers. Pretty cool, right?
But it gets better, because carbs are also the secret behind sustainable bioplastics. Take a look at PHA and PLA, for instance. PHA is actually produced by microorganisms that just feast on sugars, which makes it super biocompatible, perfect for medical stuff like surgical sutures. Then you've got PLA, which is derived from cornstarch and has this great stiffness that's ideal for 3D printing. Both of these offer totally viable, biodegradable ways to step away from our reliance on petroleum, which is a massive win for reducing our environmental footprint.
All right, moving on to number 2, nucleic acids, specifically looking at vaccines and forensics. So, shifting gears from physical materials to the actual blueprints of life, we need to make a quick distinction between DNA and RNA. You can kind of think of DNA as the master hard drive, right? It holds all your genetic instructions in that classic double-stranded storage unit. RNA, on the other hand, is the single-stranded worker. It's the active messenger that actually flies out and delivers that code to the rest of the cell to get the job done.
And by isolating these distinct helix structures, bioengineers have pulled off something incredible: the nucleic acid vaccine. Instead of the old method where we inject a weakened virus, scientists can now just inject a specific piece of viral DNA or RNA. Basically, this turns your own body into a manufacturing plant. It literally instructs your cells to produce harmless viral proteins, which then triggers a massive, highly targeted immune defense. It's just brilliant.
This exact engineering marvel is exactly why RNA vaccines were such a game-changer during the COVID-19 pandemic. The data shows these vaccines hitting around a 95% efficacy rate, which is staggering. But what's really revolutionary from a manufacturing standpoint is the speed. Because we're just writing a genetic code instead of having to grow live viruses, these vaccines were developed in under a year. Plus, there are 0 live virus particles in them, and we can easily modify the code if a new viral strain pops up.
But nucleic acids aren't just for medicine. This genetic coding absolutely powers modern forensics too. Since your DNA is completely unique to you, investigators can take just a tiny biological sample from a scene, amplify it using a technique called PCR, which basically makes millions of copies, and then separate those fragments out to build a unique visual profile. It acts like the ultimate biological barcode, flawlessly linking a suspect to evidence or exonerating an innocent person.
Okay, let's jump to our third tool: proteins, and how they are quite literally the future of food. Stepping out of the microscopic cellular machinery and onto our dinner plates, we find proteins. These things are massive, highly complex multi-tools that are actually synthesized directly from those DNA blueprints we just talked about. They're built from chains of 20 different amino acids, and the exact sequence of those amino acids dictates their precise 3D structure and ultimately their function.
And inside your body, proteins literally handle everything.
They act as catalysts for chemical reactions like amylase breaking down the starches you eat. They transport vital molecules like hemoglobin carrying oxygen through your blood. They provide mechanical support like collagen in your skin. And they even regulate cell behavior. They are, without a doubt, nature's ultimate biological machines.
So what actually happens when we start engineering these proteins for nutrition? Well, we can take a relatively simple fermented soy product like tempeh, and by mastering plant protein structures at the molecular level, evolve it into something totally extraordinary. Food engineers can now manipulate plant proteins from soy or peas to perfectly mimic the chew, the juiciness, and the exact texture of a traditional beef burger. It's a huge step forward in creating sustainable alternatives to animal agriculture.
Which brings us to our fourth and final biomolecule, lipids, and how they're powering the future.
Lipids are basically the fats, oils, and waxes that act as nature's ultimate insulators. They have this really fascinating structure, a polar, water-loving head, and a nonpolar, water-fearing tail. Because of that, when you put them in water, they naturally self-assemble. They form these perfect protective boundaries. And actually, that is exactly why they make up the membranes of every single cell in your body. They're the gatekeepers, separating the inside from the outside.
Naturally, engineers have figured out how to leverage this incredible boundary-forming behavior for modern tech. In the medical field, we're creating these synthetic lipid spheres to encapsulate drugs and deliver them safely right through your bloodstream. In fact, quick callback here, that is exactly how the super delicate RNA in those COVID vaccines gets delivered safely into your cells. On top of that, since lipids are incredibly dense energy reserves, engineers can take animal fats or vegetable oils and convert them into renewable biodiesel. That means we can run traditional combustion engines while completely bypassing fossil fuels.
So we've seen how simple sugars can become sturdy water filters, how genetic code becomes life-saving medicine, how plant structures become basically indistinguishable from real meat, and how fats become fuel. As you think about the immense power hidden right there inside your food and your cells, I want to leave you with this question. If biology has already provided a toolkit this incredibly advanced, how will these blueprints continue to reshape our technological future next? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, and as always, keep asking questions.